Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the League of Logic podcast, a podcast where you can learn how to think for yourself. We're glad you're tuning in. It's got an interesting show today. Some big events happened just a few hours ago we'd like to talk about. But in the meantime, if you would like some help in your journey for the search for truth, we invite you to check out our website, leagueoflogic.com, leagueoflogic.com. And on that website, you will find some study tools with the 4 basic pillars of logical thinking. It's apologetics, man. It's interesting stuff. Got some resources on there as well. And there's a contact us page. We would love to hear from you. We're enjoying the comments and the questions. And sorry we haven't getting to all of them. Some of them are a little over my head even. But anyway, reach out to us. Give us a question, a comment. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, we would love to talk about that. Also, we're on all the social media platforms, Truth Social and X and Facebook and Rumble and YouTube. They hadn't kicked us off yet. So a like, a share, a subscribe, a follow, whatever you can do to help us get the word out will be greatly appreciated. In the meantime, folks, sit back and relax and get ready for another conversation about the truth. Woo! What's happening, folks? Man, got the frogs this morning or something.
Got the goopies.
It's the old man gunk. Wow. What's happening, man?
How much? Start wearing a mask when you're around.
Yeah, I should wear a mask. I'm sorry. We are within 6 feet or so, aren't we? I apologize for that. I apologize. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Big news.
Eventful night last night.
Yeah, big news. Big news. So what happened?
Iran got bombed.
I tried to find some video of it. I ain't found any good yet. Have you found any video?
I don't think they've really released any, if they had any.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things I did read this morning is that there was multiple decoy bombers sent before. Iran didn't even know they were coming. I mean, they just, yeah. There was nothing they could do to stop it. And that may be why you're not seeing any videos.
Maybe.
They don't want anybody to know their tactics.
It's pretty interesting, too. Because it wasn't that long ago. It was this week. Trump was like, I'm going to give them 2 weeks to make a decision.
Which means immediately.
Which means
I'm coming after you.
Yeah, I'll be there tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway.
Of course, this morning I've been trying to look up a lot of stuff anyhow because it is interesting. The thing that I worry about, and I guess we're going to talk about, I was not looking forward to us bombing Iran because I worry about all the sleeper cells and stuff that are here.
There's a lot of stuff happening here.
Makes you worry on the backside, especially with a lot of the Africans and stuff. Iran they fund a lot of terrorists.
Absolutely, they do.
You know, they are the big money people for terrorism. Mm-hmm. So they're connected to everybody, and all these Africans that you see that's come over, the Muslim Africans,
right?
You know, that you see on the border and all that. It's all different type of groups that are Muslims we got to watch out for now.
Yeah. Because
we've done this to Iran. But anyhow, it's still kind of exciting to see what's happened. It is a relief that their nuclear capabilities are done for the next 50 years. If they started back today, it'd take them 50 years to regain where they are. But those bunker bombs, I saw a drawing on it. Man, these things are like 20 foot long, 20.5 foot, I think, 20 and a half foot long. Yeah. And when they hit the ground, they go down 200 foot.
Wow.
How is that even possible?
Kinetic energy.
That is, I mean, that's amazing, dude.
Yeah, it is.
200 foot's a long ways.
And they don't blow up until they're supposed to.
Right. That's crazy.
That is. They got to be like really skinny. Maybe that's why they're long.
I don't know,
the
man.
Payload is like.
Well, that's not even that long. You think 20 foot is not that long. That's a stick of PVC pipe.
Did you see how much they weighed though? It's an incredible amount that they weight. They're like extremely heavy.
And 200 foot's a long ways down.
You drop them from 30,000 feet or ever how high they are. I don't know how high they are, you know, but you drop them from that high. They get a long time to get up some minimum.
It's still crazy.
And what's really cool, I watched it was an animated, like a CAD drawing of it, but they're not just like You know, when you saw the old World War II and those original bombs, you know, that
It's hit the surface and boom.
right. They were just all hard metal, and they went. You know, if you didn't get it exactly right, and it just landed where it was going to land. These things they're guided.
Oh yeah,
They have these fins on the back they can adjust, and they'll put it right where they want it.
precision.
Precision.
It's still amazing. We don't know what we're just now getting to witness some of what the United States has, and you know all the world leaders are seeing this because they don't all have capabilities like we do.
Yeah.
But these missiles are the next. They're just one level underneath a nuclear bomb. And think about how effective they are.
I was trying to see if I could find where it was.
What is it you're looking for?
So I was looking for I saw it this week. I told you about it. It was the number of like fighter jets or something that America had compared to all the other militaries in the world. Yeah, the total number of military aircraft in the U.S. inventory is over 14,000. And that's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, that's incredible. That's a lot of aircraft. And other nations are.
Let's see if I could find compared to Chinese. Because that was the thing that was amazing. Because China, you know, I think they've got the second biggest military, right?
I thought it was, but I thought it
might be Russia.
Russia was air. China's got the most men.
China has. Yeah, you might be right about that. China has. I don't see where. I ain't finding it real quick. I saw a bar graph. And I don't even. Sorry, good gracious! I'm gonna have to quit talking. I got junk. I saw a bar graph over the week that was showing the comparison, and there is no country. In fact, if you totaled up what everybody else has, you still have a hard time getting to the number that America has.
Right.
Everybody else in the world.
Do you really want to mess with America?
That's what I'm saying, man. Yeah. And then some of the countries that do have aircraft, what they have is it's pretty much our leftovers. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, that they actually bought our used models or nothing, but you know what I'm saying? That's how far behind their technology is,
right,
for these aircrafts compared to ours.
Yep. Ours is our obsolete
equipment. Yeah. Obsolete equipment. Well, I guess Joe Biden did leave some stuff over there for the.
Well, except for that one.
Except for that one, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh man.
But from what I was understanding this morning, Israel had pretty much two of those sites. There was three of them. Had pretty much messed up two of them already, and then we just come in and finished those two off and took out Fort Low.
That was the big one.
Yeah, that was the big one.
Yeah.
And it's gone. Absolutely gone.
Trump said they dropped the full payload of one of his swoopy bombers on it.
Yep.
Imagine what that was like.
I have no idea.
So I got a client in real estate that they've been clients for years, actually. They were in North Carolina for a while, then they moved to Idaho. He's a fighter pilot. And they just bought a house last month back here in Clayton. They're coming back to North Carolina. And before they could get closed and get moved, he got deployed. And it was interesting because even so, if I say for one, like these military families, the military wives that have to stay home while their husbands are gone, man, that's a different breed of human being, son. They are some strong people.
Absolutely.
Because this lady is doing it all by herself. 3 kids, moving a house, setting it up.
Still has to sleep.
Still has to sleep at night. And I asked, you know, where is he at? How long he's going to be gone? You know, I didn't know, you know. And she says, well, he was only supposed to be gone for a month, but they keep extending it. So we don't know exactly when he'll come back. I mean, think about that.
Yep.
Your husband's gone for a month. You don't know when he's coming back. And 2, she said, the only thing that I know for sure is that he took a commercial flight from here to Jordan, and after that, we don't know where he went. And he can't tell us.
Yep. That's the way it happens a lot.
Yeah.
then their social media and everything gets shut down.
Yeah. So they do have access occasionally that they can send text messages or do a video chat, but it's still, I mean, you ain't got a clue where they're at.
Yep.
And then, just
Just living the life of the military, though, man. That's the way it is.
Man, this is why we have to honor those people. This is what makes me so mad about the liberals that don't.
Yep.
Anyway, gets me all swelled up with emotion when I start thinking about these guys making that type of sacrifice so that you and I can sit around here and jibber jabber about nonsense and do it freely.
About everything.
Complain about everything that stinks in the world, Yep. Man, we got it made.
Yep, I get it. But anyhow, we will see what the days bring forward.
Sometimes war is necessary, man, and you mentioned it, the American involvement in this. I mean, look, Iran and Israel, that's a war. I mean, they're going back and forth. Right. Tel Aviv got hit a couple of times. I mean, that's a back and forth. That's a terrible thing. And
I'm gonna interrupt you though, because of Trump's speech last night. Obviously, Trump and Netanyahu from day one have been in communication.
Yes.
So we have been involved in it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Nicole mentioned that last night. She kept asking, why do we keep saying that we're not involved? We're not involved. And I said, well, I mean, it's a diplomatic tactic. You have to remain diplomatic. I hate that part of it, but it's the same thing when they say we're not involved with the war in Ukraine and Russia.
Right.
That's nonsense.
Yep.
I think we were way more involved with Israel for sure.
Absolutely. And it's a tiny little country, dude, but they got some serious weapons too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
but at the same time, they couldn't do the damage the United States did.
Well, and I think that's why Trump went over there and said, hey, let me help you out right quick. We'll go ahead and take care of this.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think there was 400 missiles from submarines.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So they've been 400 miles away. Take that back. Maybe that was the 400. Anyhow, there was missile shot from submarines 400 miles away. So they've been in position for a while.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely been there for a while. Well, so I don't know how long, like in general, but the guy that I'm talking about that went over there, what month we in now? June?
Mm-hmm.
They closed on their house May the 12th, and he was already gone. Yeah. And that was, we're going for a month, and that's why they extended it. They never knew when it was going to take place, like evidently, and you're just going to hang out here till it's. And I imagine he's going to stay now until, like Trump's saying, hey, you got a chance.
Mm-hmm.
You can, he should have said surrender, but he didn't say surrender. He said, make peace.
That's what he's looking for, is surrender.
Uh-huh. Total surrender.
That's what's going to have to happen. Yep.
I wish he'd have said it, but he didn't say it.
Yeah. Diplomacy, right?
Yeah. Far greater attacks if Iran doesn't make peace after the strikes.
Yeah, that's going to change everything in the Middle East too. So when we look at end time events, which we don't go on all these, I'm not going to call them conspiracy theories, but we're not dead set on, oh, this is literal and that's whatever. These
right.
are signs that,
yeah. Looking for signs at the end times.
Yeah. I'm going to make all kinds of crazy suggestions, but it does change all that. Mm-hmm. It does make you wonder how close we are, if this is going to bring something about, or is this going to halt it? Is America coming back to God? As he said last night, it was kind of funny the way he said it.
Yeah, he said, thank the God. Yeah.
Yeah. We love God.
Uh-huh.
So is America going to come back, man? Is it the American church, is it going to start holding these things back?
Oh man. Now you're reading my book. So that was my thought I was having this morning when I was sitting there early. So like this war that you're seeing in Iran, it's bigger than just the physical part than what we see.
Sure. Because there's a spiritual side.
There is very much a spiritual war happening to it. And in fact, I would argue that the spiritual war aspect of that, one, it's been going on ever since the garden, right?
Right.
In different forms, you might not have had bombers back then, but you still had spiritual war. And two, it's much larger than what wars we see, even in the physical, this war between Israel and Iran, or even the United States involved with it. Like the spiritual war spans the globe. And it's like infiltrated every aspect of light. And so even right now inside the United States, like it's raging. We feel like well, we got it made, but man, um, it's not just the politics of a spiritual war that we see in America, if you're paying attention, but the spiritual war is like it is infiltrating the churches,
Right.
and the churches are losing. And for the most part, some are, yeah, yeah. I say it as a whole. If I'm looking at all the American church as a whole, I think we're on the losing side of it. There's some churches that are winning some battles, but the average Christian doesn't even notice that it's happening.
I think the only place that it's recognized is with COVID.
Yeah.
A lot of people are fixed on COVID, and in a way that's a distraction because they're not seeing the.
I don't believe COVID I believe COVID was just one more tool that was used, but it's not. It ain't the reason.
Yeah, and it's a big distraction.
Yes, it's a huge distraction. I mean, think about it, man. The devil he's cunning, and he is subtle.
A whole lot more than he's a lot wiser, more intelligent than we are. You can believe that.
But at the same time, he is gaining so much ground that I think we were talking about this with Chris Bagley the other day. He's gaining so much ground that he doesn't have to work so much in the backgrounds or in secret anymore. He can just do it right out in the open.
Right.
And the church is falling right in line with it in some cases. It's amazing.
But I think there's consequences for that. I'm going to inject again.
There are definitely consequences.
And people are there's groups of people who are starting to see those consequences and saying, "Oh, wait a minute."
Right. And look,
back up. We got to back up.
That's the beautiful thing about the way God has made his plan work, is that while given this opportunity to make our own choices, it gives us the opportunity to repent and turn back to him.
Right.
If we can see it in the first place. But for those that don't see it at all, then they're not going to repent because they don't see that there's wrong.
Now that's the problem. So let's go. Let's take that.
Yeah.
Go ahead and go there.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So like, I don't know, one of the passages that I came across this morning as I'm just, looking through, I'm trying to relate the physical to the spiritual all the time, just so I don't lose sight of it. It is more for me just so because I can get distracted with the physical just as easy as everybody else.
We have to keep it in our mind. You can't separate the two. They are joined together.
Absolutely. One is impacting the other all the time.
All the time.
And I came to this 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and I'm going to just read like the first 7 verses of it. It ain't, and then, but it's like, now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and by our gathering together unto him, that you be not shaken in mind or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter from us, as the day of Christ is at hand. He's like, man, things are going to get a little rough. Here you come. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that the man of sin be revealed, and the son of perdition. So none of this stuff is going to happen until there's a falling away. What is it that's falling away?
The church.
The church, absolutely. And then, like, this is where it gets interesting to me. Who opposes and exalted himself above all that is called God. He's talking about the man of perdition, or this evil guy coming, or that worship it, so that as he as God sitteth in a temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember you not that when we were yet with you, I told you these things. And now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let, until it be taken away. There's 2 things that it's talking about that's basically restraining this evil and keeping it from happening. One of those things is the church, and the other thing is the Holy Spirit. The what is that's restraining is the church, and the he that won't let it is the Holy Spirit. And like we were just talking about, when the church fails to start pointing out evil as they see it happening, to restrain it, to call it what it is, or in the church decides to just ignore it, ignore evil things that are happening, or things that are happening wrong, or even worse, like we're seeing in some churches, when churches actually go along with the evil. I mean, you're not restraining it anymore.
Right.
You're allowing it. And that's
blind to it.
You're blind to it. And instead of, I think there was another passage I came across. It was Ephesians 5:11. I'll just read that one verse too, just so people don't think I'm making stuff up. There's a whole lot here. Just started in verse 6. It says, "Let no man deceive you with vain words, for because of these things cometh the wrath of God upon the children of disobedience. Be not ye therefore partakers with them. For ye were sometimes darkness, but now ye are light in the Lord. Walk as children of the light." And then if you go down to verse 11, "And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them." So I was like, well, what does it mean to reprove? Right. And that's the warning to
Call it out.
To call it out, call it what it is, to reprimand strongly, to, I don't know, to point out the wrong. It's like a conviction, like not like the Holy Spirit type conviction, but when you go to the court and you're like, you're convicted of a crime, that's how serious you're supposed to be about it. And I kept thinking, man, we got to do better about being on guard, like more so now than ever.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. It's like, so the devil has made his way into the church, and it's not just in like the congregation, all the time. I mean, how many times do you hear sermons about, wolf in the congregation, sowing discord among the brethren? Right. He's made his way right into the leadership. I'm talking about pastors and deacons and elders and teachers. He is taking over the leadership.
And even on grander scales.
And way grander scales. Associations.
Yep.
Yeah, associations and presidents of things. And I mean, we've experienced that, right? I hate to say it that way, but we have. But so let's give the folks an example of what we're talking about, because I sent it to you too. We got a listener sent us a YouTube video this week, and I'll put the link in the description. And it was as a follow-up to our podcast we did on like what is a cult, which I didn't know was going to be that big a deal, but it turned out to be a big deal. People are actually seeing things now, which is kind of crazy, right?
Yep.
Anyway, this was a documentary that was made about a local church here in North Carolina. It was, and I'll say it, I mean, it was Faith Baptist Church of Nightdale, right? Mm-hmm. And the YouTube video is called, it's a hostile takeover of the church.
Yeah, they're open about it, so I have no problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's a documentary, right? I mean, they actually had to, and this sounds terrible, but they actually had to go to court to be able to speak freely about what happened. Can you believe that?
To warn people.
Yeah, to be able to warn people. Anyway, it's interesting if you start looking at the attorneys in that too, and which one was on which side and stuff. But I'll get to that in a second. I don't want to ruin it right to start with.
But before you get too deep into it, just let me throw this thought out there.
Come on.
When we talk about the man of perdition is going to be revealed, don't think that it's like newsflash and he's going to be on every headline news and you say, "Oh yeah, there's the Antichrist."
No,
that's not how it is. Okay,
that's a good point.
This is how things are revealed. Right? Because even Christ was talking about the spirit of the Antichrist was there in his time.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's being deceived for so long. And all of a sudden you have groups of people who start to see it. Mm-hmm. They get to see the big picture and it starts coming together. That being said, this could be a piece of that puzzle.
Absolutely.
That revealing. So anyhow.
And then, and like you're saying, everybody be pointing it out, but not everybody be listening.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because he will eventually take control. Yep. Because people will refuse to listen.
Yep.
Having itchy ears, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, sorry.
In other words, pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like the way we talked about this. Maybe it was in one of the men's Bible study we did about Satan is always grooming somebody to be able to take that position because he don't know when he's going to be able to take it over. So he's always getting people ready.
Yep. And I love the way Pastor Chris says it too. All these dry runs.
Yeah, dry runs. Yeah,
because you see it.
Yeah, it was I had never thought about it that way, but it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yep.
Anyway, so like this documentary is 2 parts. If you're going to watch it, you got to have some time, man, because each one of them's like an hour long. I don't know how many you watched, but I was like stuffing envelopes yesterday for a newsletter. We get ready for our trip. We send off our newsletter. Man, that takes forever to do. And so I just had these playing in the background, and I'm going to tell you, man, it gets your blood pumping,
Yeah, that's why one was enough for me.
Yeah, it was a lot. And so anyway, it takes some times. And I just say this too, so we don't get accused of attacking any specific religious associations. Like I didn't make these things up.
Right.
And I'm just going to give you some details about what it was. And these churches, which actually it happened to a lot of churches, but what this was specifically about churches that were part of the SBC, the Southern Baptist Convention. And but man, it is scary to see the pattern that was being used to destroy these churches from the inside out.
Because it's been repeated over and over.
Been repeated over and over. And what does that tell you just right off the bat, though? There was a master planner of this attack.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was a physical man.
Yeah. And there's absolutely something spiritual behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. A spiritual attack on the church. And
because in David's brain, when you see things repeat like that over and over and over, you identify it.
Yeah.
You begin to see its face.
You got to see its face.
What is that face of?
It's the
of
face.
The spirit.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah, when you start having the same fights over and over in the house, that's a spirit of division is coming from that guy. He's poking the bear over and over again.
If you keep arguing with somebody, a loved one or whatever, and it's the same thing every single time, start looking for a face. You'll figure out that that's a spirit, dude.
Absolutely. Anyway, so I say a pattern, too, for a couple reasons. And so, like I was telling you, I fell down this rabbit hole, man, and I was looking at all these attacks on the church, basically every one of these attacks through the Southern Baptist Convention that was happening, they were happening through the pastor. And then, of course, the leadership were following, along inside. But, the pastor actually had to set up the leadership he wanted to. Before I get to it, so there was a ton of churches that was happening to, and they had to, the members of the congregation, they got divided. And some of them were fighting for all they were worth, the best they knew how, to try to save their church from these takeovers or these attacks or this destruction. And by the way, most of these churches, the most of these members that were trying to save their church lost. They lost the battle. Yeah.
And there was things happening too that they couldn't put their finger on it.
Right.
They couldn't point to scripture and say, well, this is why this is wrong. Or in any of the bylaws or anything. They just knew stuff.
It was an unction
right.
from the Holy Spirit nudging them. Hey, this ain't good.
They were under conviction, man.
This
is not right. This is not right.
Yeah, know all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And the battle being lost too. Think about it, man. We lost the battle. And it's not that you didn't fight well.
Right.
I'm just saying, man, these things are tough, right? But so as I looked at the details of each of these attacks, there was a pattern in the method that was used over and over again. It was very, so like, you watch the first.
That's what I didn't like about it.
Yeah. That's the worst part, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because so you watch the first documentary.
Like fingers getting pointed at me.
Poking you right in the face.
Yeah.
The first documentary you watch, you see like, that's kind of familiar.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watch the second one, you're like, well, wait a minute. There it is again. And then by the time, I watched about 4 or 5 different churches that were doing these things, and they were all
the same.
They were all the same.
Yeah.
Now, if you looked at the bigger picture, there were different things happening.
Right.
But the tactic was all the same.
All come out of the same playbook.
It was all the same playbook.
Yep.
So, different circumstances, and it seemed they were all experiencing this same pattern, though, this order of the way the attack came. And it was just, it just blew my mind. And so I'm going to list out just a couple, just so to give people some warnings. This is things to be on the lookout for. You can tell, right? So like the first thing that happened was they all had a pastor who was a phenomenal speaker. They all said the same thing. Man, this guy comes in, he is charismatic. He can speak so well, and everybody just flocks to him like he's a great guy. And although it has his personality, and so through his personality and his charisma and his speaking abilities, what he does is he's able to form these smaller groups of followers inside the church, right? And these followers were just about always made up of like younger Christians, people that had just got converted, or like newer members to the church, or family. It was like doop, 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 just those. And so then you always had the older members, the one who'd been there. Some of them had been there from the beginning, like 1960. We were here, we
right.
helped build this church. And those were never part of the core, which was amazing. But so that you have this phenomenal speaker, this charismatic guy.
However, they did go through a honeymoon phase.
Oh yeah, there was honeymoon phase.
You
got
a charismatic guy. He's going to bring people in anyhow.
Yes.
Everybody's going to be wooed by him, and then that happened in every one of these too.
It happened in every one of them. Yeah. And look, not all of the newer converts and all the new members followed. Not all of them, because some of them actually got past the honeymoon phase and could see things. They were actually more grounded than what you would expect, you know.
Right.
But I'm like the young, anyway. So that was the first thing that happened. And the second thing that happened was these pastors, they started to cut programs. And
for no reason.
For no reason, never gave a reason. Like the one at Nightdale, the church, the first thing that they cut was the youth program. And then they cut a Sunday school class.
Well, and that was big too.
The youth program was huge.
They had built another, they used their own old sanctuary, turned that into the youth sanctuary, or where the
youth center, absolutely.
Youth center. And somebody had gone in there, and man, it was like the walls were a city.
It was awesome.
Even somebody pointed out half a Volkswagen was sticking out of the wall. You know,
it
had hotels and all kinds of stuff.
Garage and movie theaters and
just boom, gone.
And instead of even like giving it to another church to build, they just threw it in the trash.
Yep. 3 dumpsters out back, I think is what they said.
And so what happens is the people that were working this ministry in the youth program, they're like, you know, what's going on? And they're not getting any answers. They had Sunday school classes. They're like, well, we're cutting these out.
Yep.
We're going to quit Sunday school. And which was like, you know, what in the world? And so you see all these things happening. Bible studies were gone. Little teeny ministries inside, they just keep getting chop, 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 chop. And the unspoken goal behind doing this was to disincentivize the solid members, or these older group, or the founding members that were there to start with, and to cause them to leave.
You're going to break their spirit.
You're going to break their spirit. Yeah, you're going to break their spirit. And a lot of them did.
And some of them out of those are going to leave out of frustration.
And so they left out of frustration. Their spirit was broken. They just said, I can't take it no more. And they just bowed out quietly. We don't want to disrupt what's happening at the church. Maybe this isn't the place for us anymore.
Right.
And we don't want to go against the leadership, all these things. And so, while the other members that stayed are just left to wonder, like, what happened to that family? They were so involved with the church, and now they're not here anymore. And everybody's like, I don't know what happened to them. I guess they just, Lord led them in another direction, and the reason they wanted these core group, these founding people to be gone, was because they were the ones restraining the evil.
Exactly.
And they didn't even know that's what they were doing. And they were restraining the evil at that time, like through the Nightdale Church, by their vote. And so this pastor coming in trying to, take over the church couldn't get what he wanted done because he didn't have the vote.
Yep.
So let's run them off. It's like, here comes an issue at the end of the year, but we're not going to address it till after the first of the year, whenever the membership comes due again, make sure we get some folks off the roll.
Right. So he was controlling the vote too.
He was controlling the vote too. Yep.
And on top of that, there was another thing that happened that's very important. The way he would play against those people that would speak out or come to him, confront him. One, it was hard to get any meetings with him.
Right.
Never give a straight answer. And then he also used, well, such and such is on board.
Yep.
So you're isolating that person that comes to you, like you're
pitting those two against each other.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they couldn't take control.
Never seen that happen before.
You haven't.
Go ahead.
No. That's great. Interject all the way, man. This is because I'm glad you could see the similarities, and it ain't just me. The crazy thing was, though, as soon as these new pastors, they had taken control, as soon as they had gotten rid of their opposition, and as soon as they had put into place the people that they wanted in those spots, they restarted these programs. Mm-hmm. Only this time, they put in they put in all their family members. They put in their quote unquote their followers, their loyal followers,
right?
So they didn't have any opposition to it. Anything they wanted to get done, these people were just basically going to blindly follow. And it was also they could just maintain control, right? And so, like you said, the other thing that was there was you had those that were solid, grounded members that didn't leave, but they stayed and they questioned why these decisions were being made, or why are we trying to do this? Why is this going away? They were asking. They were flat out ignored in some cases. Nobody would talk to them.
These are the wolves.
Yeah, that's what happened. That's where I was going with that too. And in a lot of cases, they were silenced.
Yes.
And so all of these churches, they had these, it was amazing. They had these special called business meetings, and people were there recording it with their cell phone, right?
That's what really got me, man.
And
right
I'm
there.
telling you.
Same stinking thing. Go ahead.
So they had these special called business meeting, and they were supposed to be so that they were all able to discuss what was going on inside the church so that they could get an explanation for their concerns or, things that were happening, tell us what's going on so we can better understand. And then those who were questioning what was happening, like I said, they were ignored. They were just flat out silenced. Like guys, they were turning the mic off so you couldn't hear what they were saying, or they were limited to the topics that they were able to discuss.
Yeah.
Right.
You can say this, but you can't say that.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, it's over an email. No, it's not over an email. But when it's over, I'm not allowed to discuss.
Yeah, I won't go that to me. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I went that far. I don't care. So I got it and walked out. It was like, you can't discuss it.
So there was like one guy who's like, he said, I would like to, in one of the videos I was watching for a different church, he said, I would like to, what do they call it whenever you have a point of order? You hear the Democrats say it all the time. Point of order, point of order.
Yep.
And what had happened was they were in there to take a vote, and they had a whole bunch of new people in the meeting, but they didn't read the minutes from the previous meeting so they could understand what in the world they were there for in the first place. Nobody had a clue, and they wouldn't do it. And so this guy says point of order, and they're like, nope, you don't get a point of order. That's not what we're here for. And he's like, what do you mean that's not what we're here for? It's the business meeting. They're like, you know what? You're out. And they threw him out. And once that happened, then the other people got disgusted, and they started just leaving on their own.
Yep.
And look, in some cases, they were even told, like right off the bat, I listened to the one, there was a church. Hold on, I'm going to find the name of it, because this is the one this shocked me too, because this was a David Platt took over this church. We've done Platt, whatever his name is. We've done some of his stuff before.
His curriculum.
What was it? Mebane? I can't remember the name of that church. It's in Tennessee or something.
How big is the Unstuck thing? Did you see that in other places?
Yes. The Unstuck is a big deal.
Okay.
And that's part of the Southern Baptist Convention stuff too.
Wow.
Yeah. So they stand up in this one business meeting, and the new elder that was appointed by the new pastor who's trying to, take control over this church says, look, we're here today for this specific reason. And so if you say anything off topic, if you speak out of line, if you shout, if you, because you can't have a microphone, if you do any of those things, then you're going to be asked to leave. If you refuse, you're going to be charged with trespassing, and you're going to be taken out by the police.
Right. And
there was a couple that got trespassing charges as members of a church in a meeting of their church in one of their meetings. And then they got to court, and the judge laughed it off.
Yeah, because they happen to be a shareholder if they're a member.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes. It doesn't really matter how the structure is. You can't trespass on your own property, dude.
No. These videos of these meetings, it was crazy. And that was the part that got to me the most. It got under my skin the most. Because you could see in these people, like the hurt and the confusion and what is happening here. And they're doing the best they can to try to maintain some type of composure as a Christian, not lose your testimony by just acting out.
Right.
But at the same time, they are desperate to try to save their church because they see what everybody else don't see.
And I would say majority of them not necessarily could see it, but they could feel it.
Right. Yeah, it was.
They just knew it.
They knew something won't right.
Because that confusion is important, man. It's that's part of deception. You can't see it.
Yep. Yeah, you can't see it.
Yep. Hindsight's 2020. Does that make a lot of sense?
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense now. Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. At one point, so at this church in Knightdale, the First Baptist in Knightdale, so the previous pastor was still a member, and he still went. And so he was part of the people that were like, what is happening, And he could never get an audience, so to speak, with the new leadership.
All right.
And so after one of these meetings, when they made some announcements or something like that, they're out there in the foyer, and he walks up to the new pastor, and that guy's name, I think his name was Jason Little.
Yes, it was.
It was Jason, and so Jason Little, and so he says to the guy, "What are you doing? You know, like, what is your objective? What, you know, can you explain this to me?" And he played that same game you're talking about. You know, well, so and so is okay with it. Here's the other thing that I forgot to mention. When they started running off people by cutting the programs, disincentivizing them, making them angry, and they're leaving. An obvious result of that is the finances go down because the tithes and offering go down because you're running off your core, your foundational members. Mm-hmm. And as the finances go down, now they're in distress. The churches are in distress, and they've got a reason, you know, to say, "Oh man, things are bad. You know, we've got to do something to, you know, different." And so, you know, he's asking him, you know, "What did you do?" And this guy's like, "Well, ask the financial people that were in office before, you know, your people." He said, "Well, you know, I'll do that." And evidently this pastor's wife was part of a financial team at one time. And so the guy says, "And don't forget to ask your wife." Jason Little says, "Don't forget to ask your wife." And the guy says, "Hold on a second. You better be careful because now you're starting to mess with my family." Mm-hmm. And instead of, you know, I can explain to you my reasoning behind this, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's all for the glory of God. Instead of that, this Jason Little guy looks at the old pastor and says, "You're a demon. You're a wolf."
Yep.
And all this guy's trying to do is figure out what in the world is going on, calling it what it is.
There's so many things that triggered me. I guess
it was kind of triggered.
I'm like a liberal now, I guess. I don't know, but I got triggered. Same thing with missing 50% of the sermons because he has other obligations.
Oh man, yeah,
stuff he's got to do.
Yeah,
and guy's getting paid a full-time salary, but
he ain't got time to preach.
Yeah,
he ain't got time to be at the church or listen to nobody. He ain't got time for that. Anybody got time to be no pastor?
Anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah. If the new guy had to tell the truth about the reason that was behind it, this is what came out in every single one. The underlying reasoning for them doing what they were doing in whatever form it was, following this pattern, right? It came down to two things that I mean, there's probably more than that, but I narrowed it down to just two, just watching them. One was just flat out pride. They wanted to be large and in charge, total control. We are the man. You know what I mean? That was the first thing. And the second thing was it was always had something to do with a financial gain of some kind. I'm going to maintain my paycheck. I'm going to take control of a property. You know, it doesn't matter that all these members I ran off, they're the ones that paid for it and worked hard to be able to build us to where we are now. I'm going to swoop in. I'm going to take it. I'm going to have all the credit for it.
I'm going to interrupt you again. I'm sorry to keep doing this.
No, please do, man. I don't want to be the only one talking.
But I didn't watch the other videos. But was there a time that they pointed at somebody else and said, "This is what they're trying to do"?
You talking about the new leadership?
Yeah. And they're the ones who want to take the property or take the finances or whatever.
Well, they didn't accuse the foundational members of wanting to take the property and use it for their own financial gain. But what they did accuse the other members of is that they did not have kingdom work in mind. You know, they were all
basically same thing.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if that similarity was there too.
No, that one wasn't there. None of those were missionaries. Anyway,
yeah, go ahead.
So it was so like for instance, the church in Nightdale had a campus, and I don't know if it was 30 acres or 50 acres. I couldn't get the math. I know they had purchased a smaller portion and a larger in it. So they had at least 30 acres of land. It's right on the highway, man, between Wendell and Raleigh and Nightdale and all that. I mean, it was worth I think they said it was valued at like $33 or $34 million. And so in the process of running off the people and making the finances go down, obviously they weren't making budget. They were having to pull money out of savings. And so the whole purpose of that was, in this instance, what they were trying to do, this new guy coming in, is there was a bigger church called the Summit. And the Summit wanted this property. And they wanted it to make it like a satellite campus, but they didn't want to have to pay $33 million for it. So you get this guy in there who takes over control, and what he does is he just, runs off all the people that are opposed to it, because they didn't need to sell to the Summit. They were doing fine.
Right.
But they get everything to a state of disorder and chaos to the point that the church then is made to believe they're forced to dissolve.
Yes.
And so in part of the dissolution, the idea was they were going to give the Summit Church the property, and all of the Summit Church was going to have to pay was like 1.7 million to, I guess that was like to pay off what little bit of debt they might have had on some things, some projects and stuff. But it also left several hundreds $1,000s that they were going to use to grease the palms of the leaders that were in place. If what, can I stay here through retirement? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And whatever it takes, sell the property so as long as I can get my payment.
Right.
And it was
much financial stability, let's say that.
Yeah, financial stability. And never mind the fact that the church was financially stable
to start with.
Right. It didn't serve the agenda because when the church was financially stable, the guy there didn't have control. The members had control.
It became unstable when 50% of the people were pushed out.
Yeah, on purpose.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so what does that have to do with, like, we started off with the Trump and all this spirit?
Because it's a war.
It's a spiritual war, man.
Yep.
And when you look at things, sometimes it is
manifesting in the physical world.
Absolutely. And it is not always easy to stand on what is right and to call out evil.
Yep.
And so you look at what happened in Iran and these nuclear facilities getting bombed, and it's real easy to say, well, we've got nuclear weapons. Why can't everybody have them? Well, if that comes down to what are you going to do with them? And we know what they're doing, what their purpose of it is. I mean, they've said it out loud.
Right.
Death to Israel, death to America. And so to fight that kind of evil, sometimes you got to do some stuff, right? Just because it's hard, I thought about this, just because it's hard to stand up for what is right and to oppose evil and to try to restrain it, it's not an excuse to ignore it. And it's really not an excuse to buddy up with it.
No.
Right? Adrian Rogers said one time in a sermon, and I think we actually put it on one of the podcasts in the show notes. It was he said something: when you're looking for the devil inside the church, never fail to look in the pulpit. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think that the devil has snuck into the church so much, so he's infiltrated it to the point that is no longer he's just got a member or two here and there that are causing disruptions and chaos in the body by the members. He has moved his way right up the ladder, and he has taken control of the pulpit.
All right. And by pulpit, that's not just the literal pulpit. That means leadership.
I'm talking about leadership.
All the way up to the very top.
Pastors, deacons, elders, Sunday school teachers. I mean, you're getting all kinds of...
Even into the associations and denominations and all that stuff. Yep.
So one of the guys in the video described the Southern Baptist Convention as... and by the way, I mean, I love Adrian Rogers to death. They were members of the Southern Baptist Convention.
That's the biggest convention.
It's the biggest in the whole country. But he said that he described it as the kudzu of the associations that like just weaved its vines around everything and consumed it.
Yep. Can't get rid of it.
Anyway, the other note that I had that just reminded me, so these, because, you look at some of these churches, they lost. What was it called? MBC is the initials. They always kept calling themselves MBC. That's the one David Platt came in and took over. Same way. Same tactic.
See, that's scary, isn't it?
It is.
After using his curriculum and...
Yep. But it was the same tactic that was used at the Nightdale Church. Only this was not so that they could sell the property to another church for nothing. This was just so he could have it and be in charge.
Yep.
And it was like to maintain images, he would call the Southern Baptist Convention and say, how much money can we donate so that we could remain like one of the top churches? You see what I mean?
Yep.
And it's an image. How can we look good to the world? All the while, all we really want to do is just be an authoritarian leader. I want to be in control.
Here's the big problem too: is people need to realize this is when you come against something like that, it's very easy for the enemy to say that you're coming against a man of God.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You're coming against advancing the kingdom's work. It's not until after the dirty deed is done can you go back and criticize. And that's the shame that we have here. These are local churches to us.
Yeah.
Several of them.
Yeah.
And it's not until after the deed is done that you can go back and point fingers and say, see what It was evil.
It was. Yeah. And that's
That's the power of Satan's deception.
it really is. And that is the part that led me to the thought this morning that I hadn't really thought about until today. And it is these people that quote win these battles, and they won them for the devil inside the church.
Right.
They are fooled into believing that they have been on the right side of things because they were able to maintain control of the church.
Yeah.
And that's how they justify, well, I must be on God's side. But that's just another lie, manipulation from the devil.
But they can only, it's only because they're looking from the inside
That's
out.
it. Right.
They cannot see what everybody else sees. Everybody that's on the outside sees what's on the inside.
And
all of a sudden they become this little small minority of people.
Mm-hmm.
They're just deceived.
Yep. That's it. And
sad.
So really I thought, sad. Well, how could if I got stuck inside of this NBC church where David Platt had took over, and I felt like I had won, that we were, God had saved us from the bad founding members. They all were just there to destroy this church. That was their goal: destroy the church and take the money for their own gain, or whatever. Is there something that I could take a minute to step back and see? And I thought, well, one of the things that these people who had, because I saw some from that church where David Platt had taken over, where the people lost. They had some extended interviews, 10, 20-minute interviews of the people, members that had been run off and didn't go back, and where they just got to just tell, what was going on and how they felt and what had happened to them and stuff. And one of the things that they kept mentioning over and over again, which I thought was interesting, is as they're being run off, the churches, the leaders are using the Matthew 18 as justification for pushing them away, that we have to have a division.
Yeah.
We are required by the Bible to no longer associate with you because you are evil. Never mind that it's the other way around.
Right.
But they always said the same thing. So these leaders said, Matthew 18 says that we have to not associate with you until they are ready to reconcile. And I thought, man, that's interesting, because then the people who are gone, they left, they're saying, they kept talking about reconciliation, but not one has ever reached out to us to ask us if we're okay, or, we would love to have you back. We just want to make sure that we can maintain reconciliation. So my question is, how much effort have you or the remaining members of the church put into reconciling with those that were obviously hurt because they were forced out of their church? By the way, if you weren't one that was forced out, you have no clue the pain that gets caused by being forced out of your church.
Right.
These people were upset, man. I mean, it shattered some of them's lives for a long time.
Yeah.
Because your church is so important to you.
It's family.
It's family.
Yeah.
And you
just broke up a family.
Right. And you could just see it all over the face, man. You don't know the type of hurt that can be caused by a church whenever you're forced to leave a church that you love.
And it's worse when now all of a sudden you're on the outside. You knew something wasn't right when you're on the inside. It just ain't right. So you just try to battle it. Now that you're on the outside, everything's clear. That's where the pain keeps going on. And what do you do about the people who are still stuck in it?
You worry about them to death. You worry to death.
And then something I didn't see in these interviews, but what about when they go somewhere else and they're like, man, this is like the exact opposite of what I come at. Everything is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about, oh man, what are you going to do about those people who are still stuck in there? And there's no way to help them. None.
You try to point it out. That's what you were trying to do. And they can listen if they want to or not, or not.
And what's really bad is people like on the outside, they see how you act and stuff, and they immediately know what you come out of. I mean, it's just so clear to them
because they hadn't been manipulated yet.
Yeah. It's crazy, man.
So these people, like some of these people and this was the most heartbreaking ones. And so, you always talk about older believers and how they're stuck in their ways, and you know what I mean? And you got to get ready for some of these older people were very much allowing and on board with younger leadership coming in. And in fact, these pastors that were put into place, when they were put into place, they voted for them. They were convinced that it was a great direction for the church.
Yep.
But what hurt them the most is like they were there from the beginning. They had invested not just their time, but they had sunk money and sweat and tears and volunteer work and never expected anything out, because they were just happy to watch the church grow and do things for God and the kingdom.
Right.
And then they get pushed out because they want to maintain what's been going on. And they have to walk away from a lifetime of investment in kingdom work. And the hardest thing there was an older couple, man, it broke my heart. He said, the hardest thing for me to do was accept the fact that we had done these things for God and for him. And just because we had to walk away didn't mean we failed while we were doing it. It just means that we just continue our work somewhere else, and your reward is in heaven, not here on earth. And that is a hard thing to grasp, particularly when you're on the outside looking in at something that you have poured into over and over again.
Yep. So,
they would say, look, that church would have never been here if it hadn't been for this family, this family, this family, this family. And it's not that you're trying to, that family did not want a trophy, by the way.
Right.
They just said, this is what makes it so difficult, because we're worried to death about it.
And there was younger people too. I was thinking about the Sunday school teacher, that couple that was on there. They felt the same way about the kids. They loved the kids, but it's like the guy said, my family had to come first because I have kids too. I couldn't have them in this.
Absolutely.
And I still love all them kids. I still love them. That woman was crying. It just, it was like, I know how that feels.
Yep, it was tough. There was some that were like the excuses that were given for not reconciling. This is the other thing I had a question about. So if you're like in the leadership, you've stayed, you feel like you won the battle, and you want to be like the true Christian thing, but for some reason your leadership is not actually making efforts to reconcile with the brothers and sisters that were pushed out. But instead they have excuses like, how can we begin to reconcile while we're still being attacked? Because these people are making documentaries trying to tell the truth.
Right.
And you're thinking, we can't reconcile with that. And I'm just like, man, who's going to admit that there was actually really something wrong? And it's not that they don't want to reconcile. They don't want to reconcile.
They don't.
They don't want to admit they were wrong in order to reconcile. And so they've got it backwards. They feel like the people who are in the right are the ones who have to be wrong and have to admit it. In other words, you have to say this evil that took place was okay.
Yes.
And that will never happen for someone who is grounded enough to understand that it was evil.
Right.
And there was a pattern of that. As a trail of, broken-hearted churches who, one leader leaves, goes to the next one. He never admits that he was wrong. And the church is like, well, what do we do? Anyway, it was so for that listener that sent that YouTube video, you're a jerk. Thank you for ruffling my feathers again, because I have a strong, even before anything we've ever been through, I've always had a strong compassion for members of a congregation that get misled or misguided, even lied to, in order to accomplish a goal. I've always had a heavy burden for people that had these false senses of security, or the idea that we're actually doing something for the kingdom, or really it's like we talked about one time, it's false movement. It's not real, artificial movement. And as I see things like that, particularly, right down the road, man, Nightdale's happening.
It's not just one in Nightdale.
It's not.
That's what hits me so hard about it, is how many churches, local churches, it's happened to. The exact same playbook.
It is.
It doesn't vary. It's the exact same thing in the exact same order, with the exact same outcome and the exact same purpose. And it all goes back to the leadership's gain.
Yes, absolutely.
Has nothing to do with the church.
Nothing.
It's about their gain.
It was interesting too, because there were the Nightdale church ended up in a lawsuit in like in court.
Right.
And, they they both had attorneys. One of the attorneys that was working for the grounded members of Nightdale was one that we mentioned. We actually referenced them on our podcast. What is a cult? It was in the link.
Right.
And then the one that was on the wrong side of things was actually surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
that too.
Yeah, that was very surprising because they were all about getting people off of the members and not allowing certain ones to vote in that so that the leadership could maintain control, as opposed to, let everybody vote so that the leadership can maintain control.
Yeah.
It was interesting. But and then the other thing was that book or that group, The Unstuck Church. Because that I'll leave with this because I've been talking too much. The Unstuck Church was supposedly, let's get your church out of a rut. Let's make everything work great. And it's a phenomenon. It's a theory and an idea that sounds glorious, but the tactics they were using were, somewhat questionable because they were on board with it. And so I thought, well, how long ago did that happen? The Unstuck Church, and they write it. Was there a book? And maybe all of these churches had read the book and were following this pattern from a book.
Right.
But not all of them knew about this book.
Right.
Which is further confirmation to me that this is a spiritual thing.
Absolutely.
There is a spirit that has a playbook that is whispering in the ears of these leaders, and these leaders are falling for it.
Yep.
And so, I don't want people to think that, we look at these leaders and we hold a grudge against them because we don't. I actually, in some cases, I feel way more sorry for them than I do for the people that had to go through it because they are fooled. And do you understand what it means to be a leader and be fooled by Satan to the point that you're destroying something that God never intended to be destroyed? What that means later?
I'm not going to go that far in saying that God didn't want it destroyed.
Well, no, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, you're right.
Because I think he allowed it.
Yeah.
Because now, the hindsight deal, and then seeing this, I was 4 or 5 churches locally do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Now I see where others have advanced. Other churches.
Other churches are benefiting from the grounded people leaving the crap. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm not just talking about me and you either.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. Yep.
And yeah, it's almost like it's almost like business. You do the same thing in business. You do the same thing in finance. I need to move this over here because this is effective. This is not.
This is not. That is true. Yep, that's true.
Yep. Anyhow.
Well, then the other point that you made one time too, and I have actually reiterated this to other people because I didn't really think about it like that, and that is that some of these people, me particular, during this whole struggle that they've gone through, it actually prompted them more study, more time with God. And in the end, even though it was rough, it's beneficial because now you feel even more grounded than you were before.
Sure. Yeah. The more clarity.
More clarity.
Yep.
Anyway, I put those in there. So like you'll see there was 2 episodes for the hostile takeover of the Nightdale Church. There's one that's like the David Platt revealed, or the real David Platt. I think that's his name. Might be Pratt, but I think it's Platt. And then after that, then you get into all these different interviews from members that are coming out of the church where they're telling you their story, and they're not in a room together. They're telling it individually,
right.
But it's the same. I mean,
same thing,
same bullet points all the way down.
Yep.
Anyway,
it's worth checking out.
Yep.
If you ever been in a church that's divided or falling apart or whatever, take a look. So war, man. It just because it's in the physical don't mean it's not spiritual. Don't ever discount that. No,
pay attention.
Because many things in the spiritual manifest in the physical.
Pay attention, man. Pay attention. What else you got?
That's it.
All right. We'll see y'all, folks. Thank you for listening to another episode of the League of Logic podcast. We hope that one wasn't too deep and over your head and boring and all at the same time, but what it really did was make you think. You have to be aware of the spiritual battle, on the lookout for it. Otherwise, it'll sneak right in and you won't even know it. If you need some help in your search for this type of truth, check out our website, leagueoflogic.com, where we have some study tools, some 4 basic pillars of logical thinking. They are absolutely beneficial in trying to spot evil, to find truth in a world full of chaos. Also, we're on all the social media platforms, Truth Social and Twitter and X and all of them. If you would like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you got to do to help us get the word out. That would be greatly appreciated. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention, don't forget to contact us. I called you a jerk for sending us that video, but we really do appreciate your feedback, man. It gives us something to talk about that we know you want to hear. So reach out to us. Give us a question, a comment, a review, something that we did wrong. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, folks, we hope you have a good week, and we look forward to you tuning in on the next episode.